Welcome to Mint Views. Today we are going to talk about the sad and shocking communal flare-up in the city of Delhi. The death toll, last counted, is 20 people dead. Tension has been building up before the elections of Delhi, in the run-up to the elections and even after that, over the Citizenship Amendment Bill, largely, and the big question of whether or not citizenship should have anything to do with religion whatsoever. Tensions, of course, have come to a boil. We have seen violence. It is sad, it's unfortunate. The role of the police in particular has been brought into question. Have they acted neutrally? Have they actually adhered to the constitutional principles that they should treat everybody equally? The Chief Minister of Delhi, Arvind Kejriwal, seems to think that they have absolutely failed. He's saying the army needs to be called in. What we're going to ask today and throw to the panel is whether or not the army now needs to be brought in to bring the situation in Delhi under control. So, let's begin. Srijay, what do you think about this?
Arish, I agree that the situation is really unfortunate in what has been happening over the past couple of days. At a time when US President Donald Trump was visiting India, and such kind of communal tensions, many would say, has not been seen on the streets of Delhi since 1984 riots. For a communal conflagration to go on for 3 days actually says a lot about the role of Delhi police. It shows that it has failed utterly, and that is why the army needs to be called in, because army, for all you know, is among the few institutions that is regarded in high esteem, and it is held to be neutral. And army should be called in actually to restore normalcy and calm in the city.
Do you agree with that, Shrija?
I think there's definitely some merit to the argument that the police forces are ill-equipped, as we have seen with the spurt in violence that has been happening. But I would differ in the sense that the army, calling the army should be actually the last resort, which in this case Kejriwal's administration has sort of placed it. But when you call in the army or the men in the uniform, they have a well cut out tasks. They have their duties defending the borders. So the matters related to internal security or internal affairs is very much localized, and it also requires very specialized knowledge that actually which the police forces are capable of, or they are in possession of that knowledge. So the police in that sense are more attuned to deal with the specificities of the violence in the region rather than the armed forces, who have a more broad base, have a more national view of things. And also the other angle that I would like to point out is the armed forces, when you constantly bring in armed forces to handle matters which are supposed to be the domain of the current dispensation or the police in that sense, that also stretches the armed forces budget and also hampers the training which goes on when they do a lot of training on the conventional warfare. So it also hampers with the day-to-day operations. It's not actually feasible
but this is an emergency situation. People are dying on the streets, and we also have the problem of the police ending up in some cases as participants in the violence, and that's another kind of problem. Anant, what do you think about this?
I think I tend to agree slightly with what Shrija is saying, that, agreed, there's no arguing that this is indeed a very sensitive situation. We need to bring things under control. But I think bringing the army may not be the best solution. It may end up flaring up the tempers further. And the police also, I think we prey on them very easily. We tend to, blame them for everything that happens. And we don't usually introspect the way we are behaving as society, as politicians. You see the role of so many people like Kapil Mishra, so many people on the opposition side who've been making inflammatory statements, be it the Asaduddin Owaisis of the world and others. So they don't seem to be introspecting what exactly they are doing and how they are contributing to this flare-up. For 63 days, there is an argument that for 63 days or even more, there were protests going on. Were they not actually fueling this kind of a situation? They were ultimately that has created a situation where you can also, the other side would argue that the trigger was Kapil Mishra's statement about, taking on such protesters aggressively. So I think it's very easy to blame the police, but they are also doing a very tough job. They are in a very difficult situation, and we should not always be blaming them for what is happening in our society.
Well, the larger context very clearly is the tinderbox that India has ended up in thanks to the question, the fundamental question of what it means to be Indian. Does it have religion to do with it, or is it neutral in a religious sense? In that sense, I think we need to stop specifically blaming people in this situation, but introspect, like you said, and try to figure out how we reached here, what is wrong, that we're actually witnessing people going to the extent of killing each other on the streets. And it needs to be stopped. I would think that the army perhaps needs to be called in at a juncture now, because if in 3 days, as Srija pointed out, we cannot bring the situation under control, something needs to be done quickly before this flares up and goes even further. And it must certainly not spread. Thank you.